Hi, this is Professor Innes again, and for this week we are discussing Immanuel Kant and the categorical imperative. We've discussed Bentham and his consequentialist ethical decision-making. With the Bentham, it's the case we view the outcome as a means of resolving an ethical dilemma. Therefore, if we get the greater pleasure from a given act as opposed to another act, then we carry out that act, and that's all we use as a means of reasoning. So it's pleasure for Bentham. Now here Kant would consider that notion to be quite repugnant. And it is considered to be repugnant because we tend to be seeing the act leading towards the consequences of pleasure, therefore neglecting the actual act itself. This is when we talk about this thing called deontology. Therefore, we're considering the act in its own sake, for its own sake. So therefore, we can use an individual as a means to an end, according to Bentham, whereas Kant says the use of that person as a means to an end is repugnant. It is a revolting thing to do. We can't use individuals. So in that way, therefore, Kant is rejecting Bentham. And in its place of consequences, he talks about this thing called deontology, which, as we said here, is viewing the act in and of itself. So when it comes to a human being, we treat that person as an end in themselves. This is written in the second categorical imperative, that all members of humanity, regardless of who they are, you, yourself, your next door neighbour, that person you don't particularly like, or so forth and so on, they're all ends in themselves. You can never use them as a means to an end only. So in that way, here we're viewing people as possessing autonomy, dignity, consideration, whatever characteristics we attach to that individual. So consequences are irrelevant to Kant, and we must therefore just talk about this notion of deontology, treating people as ends in themselves. With this, it's quite clearly understood that people possess free will. So think about that. We're not going to use people as means to an end. That's the first point. Second point would be we do this because we respect their autonomy. With this consideration, their autonomy, not free will, sorry, their autonomy is to be respected. Now we'll go on to what would be the third point, which is that, as I mentioned, the free will aspect. Now the free will aspect is the consideration that people are able, they have this moral integrity built within them, which allows them to make these decisions. So therefore I can go to the restaurant, and at least I'm going to feel guilty for using this person as a means to an end, knowing that they don't get paid very much, and I've just spent an hour or so sitting there, being served at very little expense, relatively speaking. So I think to myself, right, okay, I've got free will. I can actually work out if what I've done is right or wrong. I've decided it's wrong. I don't know what I'm going to do about it in the restaurant, but at least I know it's wrong in that way. So that makes me an ethical agent, because without free will, there's no way of actually saying here that I can make these choices. If I can't make choices, I can't be moral. So for Bentham, this notion of free will is of great importance. So we've highlighted already autonomy of the individual, as emphasized in the second categorical imperative, and also this notion of free will, this ability to make free choices. And on top of that, we've already mentioned deontology, which is carrying out the act for its own sake. So remember those 3 points: free will, autonomy, and deontology, please. Right, with this, I think we need to then move on to this notion of duty. This is emphasized within deontology, but we've got to emphasize duty in regards to happiness. Happiness is not important within Kant's reasoning. In fact, it's outright irrelevant. So therefore, one carries out one's duty. Therefore, I'll treat that person as an end in themselves, because it's the dutiful thing to do. I'm not doing it because I'm going to worry about the consequences. It's just the case I must treat this person as an end in themselves. Again, it's written in the formulation of the categorical imperative that this duty is of great importance. And I'm fulfilled by this duty because I've decided for myself that I must do the right thing and do the right thing at all times. So I have a duty not to steal. I have a duty not to kill. Now, if I decided that killing is wrong and that stealing is wrong, then all acts thereafterwards would be regulated, again, self-regulated by me, not by anybody else, because I've chosen not me, not anybody else. So therefore, everything I do will be regulated by this categorical imperative. So, if I'm driving to wherever, and I see a drowning child in the canal, I have the duty to go and save that child because hitherto I have decided that life is precious and must be preserved, and I can, with total reason, capability to go and save the child. I can swim, whatever, it would be no threat to me, so I go and save the child. So I have the duty, I'm duty bound to carry out the categorical imperative. And this is going to be done without view of happiness or pleasure. We must again emphasize this bit. This is duty. Duty actually might make you miserable, but nonetheless it's duty, and in order to be moral, you must carry out your duty. So here, pleasure, happiness is of no consequence. So we've got to emphasize that bit. The categorical imperative might actually make your life a misery, but nonetheless you're a moral person as a result. Okay, so I think we've highlighted everything within Kant's ethical reasoning. So with that, on top of it, keep in mind the two formulations. Write about those within your journal entries, the discussion board. And if you're doing an essay later on, make sure you mention the two formulations. The first one to do with if you carry out an act, you must keep in mind that you're making it universally acceptable to carry out that act. So again, back to stealing. Everything to do with stealing must be avoided. And if you do steal, you've basically said that stealing is fine. That's very problematic for you if you wish to say that somebody else has stolen from you and you have stolen yourself. You've got no grounds for saying it's wrong. And the second categorical imperative is the respect of other people's autonomy and treating them as ends and never as a means to an end. So keep those two formulations in mind. Right, so hopefully all of that made sense, and it was in the order which allowed you to understand the categorical imperative. Now, there are problems with Kant's ethics. I've got to move quickly because the time's getting on here. There are problems with categorical imperative. Now, Kant talked about free will, and that ability to choose between right and wrong. But did he prove that free will existed? No, he didn't. And again, providing circumstantial evidence is not good enough evidence. You have to prove emphatically that people have free will. You've got to show it. It's like showing one's kidney or one's heart. I have a heart, I have a kidney. But you can't do that with free will. That's a problem. Just feeling that you have free will, I'm my own boss and all that stuff, doesn't say that you have free will. So that is a problem. We mentioned the happiness thing. If we go through life being miserable, carrying out one's duty, nonetheless, we may start to resent this. We may start to think, why am I doing this? I'm miserable. I should, give up this thing called the categorical imperative and start doing things for myself. I'm getting really fed up with helping others because that's my duty. I'm not going to do it anymore. So there might be a problem that it is somewhat antagonistic to the well-being of the individual themselves, and we're all miserable because we do our duty. That's something Bentham would come forward with a counter-example. So think about Bentham's counter-example to this notion of duty and carrying out one's duty from a psychological perspective. So They're two of the main criticisms put forward. The third one, out of many points of criticism, is that this is too rigid. Kant's categorical imperative is too rigid. So here's the scenario for you. It's a famous one. I'm going to use this one, and it's of the person stood near the railway track, and there is a fork in the railway track, and with a lever. Now, if the person does nothing, the train on the railway track will go down the line and run over 4 people who are tied to the railway track. Now, if he pulls the lever, it will divert the train down the other track and only kill 1 person. So you think to yourself, okay, from Bentham's perspective, we think about the greatest good for the greater number, and considering that all human beings in this case, we'll say, for the sake of argument, are of equal importance, worth, and all that stuff, you should pull a lever just so only 1 person is killed. Now, with Kant, okay, right, if you pull that lever, then you've killed somebody. You've just said that killing is okay. You let it go and kill the 4 people by just driving on, then you're guilty of no immoral act whatsoever. Bit of a peculiar situation there. You may consider this to be quite ridiculous. That you're in a position of inactivity. You can't really act to actually help people because you're carrying out your duty. And again, there's lots of misery here. People are not going to be happy with this way of thinking. Another one I use is telling of the gunman. I think I've mentioned it before with this one. I might have, I don't know. The gunman comes into the classroom, and gunmen are notoriously impulsive. So you think to yourself, I'm going to lie to this person and tell them that the gun's not loaded. So I say, okay, I can tell by the way you're holding that gun that the gun is not loaded. The person throws the gun down on the floor and runs away, and everybody in the classroom is happy because they're going to live, and so forth and so on. Later on, you say, okay, I knew it was loaded. By the way he was carrying it, it was a heavy gun, but I lied. Now, for Kant, you've just broken a categorical imperative. But you have just saved 40 people's lives. Okay, right. So I'm duty bound. I'm dead. So I'm dead right. Right. Okay. This doesn't. What is the point of all that? I don't know. And again, the parents of all the students and relatives and all that stuff won't be at all convinced by that reasoning. You being dead right, and everybody else being dead right as well. So we've got problems with Kant, lots and lots of problems here. Right, so hopefully this has helped you understanding Kant. Please ask me questions if you need to do so, and see you online for discussion in the journals. Let me know if you've got any problems, if you need anything whatsoever. So speak to you later. Bye.